Hello and welcome to News Review. I'm Neil, and joining me across on the other side of London is Catherine. Hi, Catherine.
Hello, Neil. Hello, everyone.
Now, what story have you got for us today?
Well, today we're looking at the Black Lives Matter protests that have been happening in a lot of countries around the world.
Okay, let's find out some more about that from this BBC Radio 4 news bulletin.
The Prime Minister has condemned what he called racist thuggery after clashes between protesters and police in central London. Crowds of mainly white men gathered around the Sir Winston Churchill statue in Parliament Square, saying they wanted to protect it from vandalism by anti-racism demonstrators.
So, following the death in the United States of George Floyd, there have been Black Lives Matter protests all over the world. Now, recently in the British city of Bristol, protesters removed the statue of a man called Edward Colston, who was a slave trader, and they threw it into the river. Now, people are now worried about the statue of Winston Churchill outside the UK Parliament, Houses of Parliament, and at the weekend there were a lot of protests around this statue. A lot of far-right demonstrators surrounded the statue. There was some violence with the police and over 100 people were arrested.
Okay, well, you've been looking at the headlines around this story and you've picked out 3 words and expressions. What do you have?
We have thuggery, clash and headed off.
Thuggery, clash and headed off. So your first headline, please, with that word, thuggery.
So first we're going to Sky News here in the UK. The headline, more than 100 arrested at protests as PM condemns racist thuggery.
Thuggery, violent behaviour.
Yes, this word is spelt Thuggery and it's pronounced thuggery. Now let's take the root of this word, thug, Thug. Neil, you know what a thug is, don't you?
I do. A thug is a violent person, somebody who enjoys creating violence.
Yes, like a hooligan or a bully.
That's right. And we often hear this word in connection with that word you said there, hooligan, connected to football violence, for example.
Yes, we could talk about football thugs. A football thug is somebody who creates a lot of disturbance, who fights at football matches just because they like fighting, quite frankly. And if we so the thug is a noun for a person, thuggery is a noun for the behaviour. So in this case, Boris Johnson, the UK Prime Minister, was talking about racist thuggery based on race. But we can talk about all sorts we can talk about football thuggery, and that means thuggish behaviour, which is the adjective, thuggish. Thuggery is violent, aggressive behaviour at football matches.
That's right. Can a woman be a thug?
Yes, a woman can be a thug. It's interesting. If you look in the dictionaries, they often talk about, a lot of them say it's a man, it's a violent, aggressive man. But in fact, anybody can display thuggish behaviour, whether they're male or female.
That's right. Okay, let's now have a summary of that word. Time now for our second headline then, please.
Yes, now we're going to the I, still in the UK. The headline, Black Lives Matter protests resume after far-right clash with police in London.
Clash, here just meaning fight.
Yes. Okay, so the word is clash, C-L-A-S-H, clash. And clash is an onomatopoeic word. That means it sounds like a sound. So what's a clash, Neil?
Well, for example, 2 pieces of metal hitting each other, let's say swords, seeing as we're talking about fights, they create a clash.
Yes, in those fantasy dramas, things like Game of Thrones, everybody's fighting with metal weapons like swords and they have metal shields to defend themselves. And as these two pieces of metal hit each other, you get this clashing noise. The noise of metal hitting metal is a clash. But the word clash also describes the fight itself. You've got two people clashing on the battlefield. And that's the use of clash in this case. A clash is a fight. It's an aggressive confrontation. Here, the fight or the confrontation, the aggression was between the police and the far right demonstrators. But you can also use the word clash when there isn't any violence, just to describe a disagreement, a strong disagreement. I think sometimes, Neil, I've seen you clashing with people in meetings occasionally.
Well, I try not to. And I definitely wouldn't bring a sword.
No, you wouldn't bring a sword to a meeting, but if you have a disagreement with somebody and you kind of, it's a slightly angry disagreement or it's a very, serious disagreement, one-on-one, you can call that a clash.
We often see clashing in Parliament, don't we?
Yes, politicians clash with each other often. They have angry arguments in the political arena, but you can clash with somebody at home as well. You might say, I clash with my husband over childcare, and the prepositions are you clash with somebody over something.
Yeah, and we see this word a lot in headlines, don't we? It's not necessarily something you would use in your everyday speech.
Not as much as headlines love it because it's a really dramatic word. Fight is a good word, but clash has a lot of drama to it. So headline writers really like this word, clash.
Okay, let's have a summary. We have another video on the subject of racism which you might like to watch. Where can they find it, Catherine?
Yes, it's a story about racism in the UK, and if you click the link in the description, you'll go straight to it.
Time for our next headline, please.
Yes, we're at BBC News here in the UK. The headline, clashes headed off by police at Glasgow statue protest.
Headed off. Prevented from happening.
Yes, so two words in this vocabulary item now. Headed, H-E-A-D-E-D, and off, O-F-F. Headed off. Now this is a phrasal verb. It's a past of the verb head off. Head off. You'll be pleased to know, Neil, that this isn't about removing anybody's head.
Yes, that is good to know. It's also not really connected to another phrasal verb, also head off, which means to start going somewhere.
Not so much, no. If you head off on a journey or you head off towards something, you start moving in that particular direction. So it's not about starting a journey. It's more to do with preventing somebody else completing their journey. So in this case, the Glasgow protesters, Glasgow's a city in Scotland in the UK, they have a statue there. The protesters wanted to get to this statue, so they headed off in that direction, but the police got to the statue first and they stopped the demonstrators from reaching their target. So if you head somebody off or you head something off, you stop it from completing its journey.
And we often can hear this word used to describe, for example, planning to prevent something bad happening in the future. Like we could say that flood defences headed off the threat of flooding.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, most definitely.
Or perhaps I headed off a tantrum from my children by buying them ice cream.
Yes, you can head off a lot of bad events with ice cream with kids.
Okay, let's have a summary. Time now then for a recap of the vocabulary.
Yes, we had thuggery, violent behaviour. We had clash, which means fight, and headed off, prevented from happening.
If you'd like to test yourself on the vocabulary, there's a quiz on our website, bbclearningenglish.com. Stay safe. See you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.